Hey everyone! Welcome back to Story Hive channel, your go-to place for the best Reddit stories on the web. If you love diving into amazing tales, crazy confessions, and heartwarming moments from Reddit, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Let's jump into today's story. I, a 23-year-old woman, have a younger sister, Lisa, who is 18. I believe she is the true incarnation of evil on Earth. Over the years, I have tried my best to convince my parents of her true nature, but they never believed me, at least until now. For context, my parents and I have always had a somewhat strained relationship, mainly because of Lisa. My parents absolutely adore her because my mother had a miscarriage and lost the baby, which deeply affected her. Lisa, born a few years later, was regarded as their miracle child, a beacon of hope and joy that healed the pain of their previous loss. My parents showered her with affection and attention, turning her into the center of our family universe. Now, let me be clear, I loved my younger sister when we were children. It's just that I slowly started realizing that Lisa had an incredible talent for manipulation that none of my family members could grasp. She knew how to twist the story in her favor and was a master at playing the victim card. Once on my birthday, I received an amazing antique pocket watch from our grandparents. I was thrilled because my grandmother told me it was a family heirloom. However, Lisa, clearly jealous, kept asking if I could share it with her. I said no because it was a gift for me on my birthday. She tried to persuade our parents, but since it was from our grandparents, they couldn't do much. That night, knowing I was terrified of spiders, Lisa placed a house spider inside my pillowcase, ensuring I would discover it when I went to bed. I awoke to the horrifying sensation of a spider crawling over my skin and started screaming. My parents rushed to my room, concerned, while Lisa acted all surprised and caring. Later, she admitted to me with a creepy grin, when we were alone, that she put the spider there to teach me a lesson. I was shocked by how casually she confessed without any remorse. But as soon as Mark arrived at our house, Lisa deliberately spilled a glass of juice all over my dress and started laughing. I was mortified and had to change, trying to hide my embarrassment. As if that wasn't enough, Lisa started telling Mark embarrassing stories from my childhood, making me feel utterly humiliated. She didn't leave us alone the entire time we watched the movie. When Mark was about to leave, Lisa smirked and told him that he could do much better than me. Mark, who had been uncomfortable the entire time, left in a hurry. I just couldn't believe how cruel and cunning my younger sister could be. Over the years, I told my parents about her antics several times, but they always chalked it up to her being young and naive. They just couldn't see her for who she really was. Whenever I complained, they dismissed me and thought of me as the troublemaker in the family. I eventually stopped speaking up about her. Lisa continued being their favorite child while I, always straightforward, often felt like an outsider in my own family. I focused on my studies and managed to get into a good college, which gave me a chance to move out of our house and have a better life. However, every time I returned home during breaks, Lisa made it abundantly clear that she despised having me back. She would deliberately ignore me, refusing to engage in even the most basic conversations. During family meals, she would avoid sitting next to me or interrupt me if I was talking to our parents. Her constant need to undermine my presence was evidence that she despised the idea of me being around and was determined to make my visits as uncomfortable as possible. Lisa even used to mess with my stuff, pretending she needed to borrow things, but often damaging or losing them instead. My parents did nothing when I tried to complain and instead urged us to get along. As a result, I began avoiding coming home during breaks, coming up with excuses to spend my breaks with my college friends' families instead. Truth be told, my parents didn't mind as much and chalked it up to me being independent and wanting to enjoy some time away from home. When Lisa graduated from high school, she didn't have the grades for college, so she settled for community college instead. This meant that she never had to move out of our parents' place. These days, I am working at a multinational corporation in San Francisco and genuinely enjoy my job. I sometimes stay in touch with my parents but rarely visit home. I don't maintain any contact with Lisa whatsoever. Now, onto the recent events. My father recently had a near-fatal heart attack. Fortunately, he survived by some miracle and was rushed to the hospital. When my mother called to tell me about it, I immediately booked my tickets and flew back home to be there for them. The doctors prescribed numerous medications for my father and strongly advised him to start working out. Since being discharged, my father has expressed a desire to spend more time with us as a family and told me how lucky he was to be saved from the brink of death. I understood where my dad was coming from, so I continued spending a few days at our house. My job has the option to work remotely, so it was no problem. However, I noticed that Lisa was deeply agitated that I was back. I tried my best to avoid her because we were both older now and I didn't want to argue after our dad's heart attack. One morning during breakfast, my father suggested that we all go on a family vacation, as it had been a long time since we all went somewhere together. Initially, I had my reservations, but knowing how important it was to my dad, I agreed. As for Lisa, she wasn't thrilled about it, but had no choice but to go along with the plan. My father made all the arrangements for our flight and accommodations. I had planned my leave from work in advance and informed my colleagues not to contact me during this time as I genuinely wanted to enjoy quality time with our parents. However, when we arrived at the airport, I found out that my flight ticket had been canceled. I exchanged puzzled looks with my father, who kept insisting that he had booked and paid for my ticket. When we checked further, it turned out that out of the 4 tickets, the one with my name on it in particular had been mysteriously canceled. As I stood there trying to comprehend the situation, I looked over at Lisa. She had a sly smile on her face as she stared at me. It was a look I had seen so many times before, the same expression she wore when she had successfully pulled off one of her manipulative tricks. I realized at that moment that she was the one who had canceled my ticket, probably from my father's computer. I started yelling at her as she continued to stand there smiling at me. I pointed out to my parents that it was Lisa's doing as she never wanted me to go on this family vacation in the first place. Instead of believing me, my mother immediately dismissed my claim, saying, "Your sister would never do something like that." She went on to tell me that I should stop being jealous of my younger sister and that it was just a freak accident that my ticket had been canceled. My father also tried to justify that this might have been an airline mistake and that I should not blame it on my sister. I was utterly frustrated that my parents couldn't fathom that their beloved miracle child would be behind such a deception. At this point, there was nothing I could do. My ticket was already canceled, and there were no other flights for that day. While it was possible for me to catch a flight the next day, I didn't relish the idea of returning home, booking a new flight, and traveling alone. After all, this was supposed to be a family trip. I was also dreading sharing a room with Lisa during this trip. I had hoped that she had matured over the years, but if she was behind the cancellation of my flight ticket, I couldn't help but wonder what other schemes she might have in store to make my trip miserable. But he then started talking about how it had been ages since he went on a vacation. My mother agreed, telling me that I always travel a lot for work, so I wasn't going to miss out on much on this trip if I didn't go. Their comments really got to me. It felt like they wanted me to insist they continue to go on this vacation without me. I told them that they were welcome to continue with their vacation if they wanted, and they readily agreed. Although I didn't want the money they had spent on the tickets and rooms to go to waste, I was sad that they didn't care whether I joined them or not. It became clear that they didn't mind going on this family vacation as a family of 3. So, there I was, standing alone at the airport as my parents and Lisa headed for their much-anticipated vacation. I decided to return to my home in San Francisco, not wanting to spend a day further alone in our family house. I tried my best to put the incident behind me and focused on enjoying the rest of my leave that I had already taken from work. I reconnected with old friends and spent my days engrossed in books, turning my break into a solo vacation. During the trip, my parents would sometimes video call me, and I could see how much they were enjoying the trip without me. It was like my absence didn't really affect their trip in any way. Although I wasn't too heartbroken about missing the vacation, I couldn't help feeling excluded. It was yet another reminder of the favoritism that had always existed in our family. I hoped that someday they would see through Lisa's true nature, and I guess my wish finally came true. A few days into their vacation, I woke up to several missed calls from my mother. Worried that my father's health might have taken a sudden downturn, I immediately called her back. Thankfully, she picked up, but she sounded extremely distressed. I asked her if everything was okay, and she went on to explain that something deeply troubling had happened. Apparently, my parents had noticed that my father's essential heart medications were disappearing day by day. It was an alarming situation as my father couldn't afford to miss his medication given his fragile health. They were in a foreign country and didn't know if the same medicine would be available outside of the US. They were genuinely concerned about the missing pills and searched their room everywhere in vain. After my mother discovered all the missing medications hidden in Lisa's bedside table, it was a chilling revelation. She immediately called my father, who rushed over and confirmed that all his missing medication was found. This discovery made it painfully clear to them that their beloved daughter, the so-called miracle child, had intentionally jeopardized my father's health. It was a harsh reality that their favored daughter had been putting him at great risk. My mother's voice trembled as she asked if they should confront Lisa about this. I advised her not to address it until they returned home. I suggested they needed to gather their thoughts, emotions, and evidence to face Lisa with undeniable truth. Confronting Lisa at that moment would be futile, as she was a master manipulator who would likely concoct excuses to evade responsibility. However, something unexpected happened. My parents must have confronted Lisa about the missing medication, and I received a late-night call from my father. His voice was trembling as he informed me that Lisa had been arrested. I was taken aback. My father recounted that Lisa had a full-blown tantrum when they confronted her about the medications, throwing objects and shouting insults. Her rage was primarily directed at my father, accusing him of booking a ticket for me when he should never have allowed me on their family vacation. She threatened that if they continued their relationship with me, she would teach them a lesson they would never forget. Her outburst escalated rapidly, prompting someone from the hotel to call the authorities. When the police arrived, Lisa refused to calm down and insulted them, leading to her arrest. Lisa would be released after 24 hours, and my parents were stranded without passports or wallets. It turned out that Lisa had either discarded or hidden their passports. Stranded in a foreign country, my parents began to see Lisa for who she really was. My mother, who had persistently defended Lisa for years, was now begging for my help as they had no money or documentation. Overwhelmed and distraught, she was finally facing the truth about her angelic daughter. I assured them I would send money via Western Union, but insisted they locate their passports first. My parents were realizing that I had been honest about Lisa's antics all along and were grateful for my support despite not taking me on their vacation. They apologized for their past behavior, and while part of me wanted to forgive them, it was hard to shake the feeling of being deprived of their love due to their favoritism towards Lisa. Update 1. My parents kept calling with updates, and I grew increasingly anxious about their situation. After Lisa's release from jail, my parents threatened her with calling the authorities again if she didn't return their passports. Faced with no other choice, Lisa revealed where she had hidden them. Upon returning home, my parents confronted Lisa and made it clear she needed to leave. They had reached their breaking point, finally realizing the extent of her manipulative and harmful actions. During the confrontation, Lisa hurled accusations at my parents, expressing her anger and resentment. She claimed that she didn't want to share them with anyone else and insisted they disown me. She went further, threatening to accuse them of neglecting her during her childhood and making false statements to the police. This terrified my parents as they were well-respected doctors in the community. The threat of their reputation being ruined left them feeling trapped and anxious. Lisa's behavior continued to escalate. She began breaking dishes and hiding car keys, making it difficult for them to function. One night, after refusing to cook for her, Lisa went on a rampage, breaking furniture and playing loud music, disrupting their sleep. The situation worsened daily, taking a severe toll on their emotional and mental well-being. Update 2. Lisa's escalating antics finally led to her arrest one night after a violent confrontation where she came at my parents with a knife. Terrified, they called the police, who took her into custody on charges of assault. With Lisa in custody, my parents consulted with an attorney to discuss the legal process for evicting her. They filed a formal eviction notice, ensuring everything was done by the book to avoid any legal challenges. My parents felt immense sadness and guilt about taking their own daughter to court, but believed it was necessary for their safety. The court issued an official order for Lisa to leave the house. If she didn't leave voluntarily, they would have the legal right to remove her. Lisa is expected to be out by next week. My parents are hopeful for peace once she moves out. I plan to bring them to San Francisco for a few weeks to help them relax and support them after all they have been through. Update 3. As I received hundreds of comments on my post, many suggested considering a mental health evaluation for Lisa. Since she's an adult, we can't force her into a checkup. Given her violent outbursts, we want to avoid escalating the situation. My parents visited me in San Francisco for a much-needed break. They opened up about their regrets and acknowledged their blindness to Lisa's true nature. My father expressed remorse for not heeding my warnings earlier, and my mother admitted to the pain of realizing their favoritism had caused me suffering. They listened to my painful memories and acknowledged the emotional toll I had endured. We agreed that rebuilding our relationship would take time, but this was a turning point that brought much-needed honesty and clarity. Update 4. As the days passed, my parents and I explored San Francisco, enjoying each other's company and rebuilding our bond. Their decision to seek solace with me wasn't just about escaping Lisa, but about finding a fresh start. We discussed the possibility of Lisa having deeper issues beyond willful mischief. My parents plan to encourage her to seek voluntary help, and they will reach out to her when they return home. I won't contact her myself due to the potential risk of further aggression. Our goal is to address the issues that have strained our relationships and help Lisa understand our love and concern. It's not about assigning blame, but about coming together as a family to heal and move forward. Thanks for tuning in to today's Reddit story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss out on more amazing stories. See you next time.